as I was saying, welcome everyone to this Governance and Audit Committee meeting on Monday, the 27th of November 2023. It's a hybrid meeting, although everyone who needs to be here is in the room, I think. So that's excellent news. Item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. We'll duly noted. And the other thing I think we probably need to do at the top of the agenda is there isn't a section called welcome, but we will welcome our new Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Liam Hull. Welcome to you, and very appropriate meeting to turn up as a new CFO, because today's meeting is all about the accounts. So that's a very appropriate timing. Item 2 on the agenda is declaration of interest. Members are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and prejudicial interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda in accordance with the provisions of the acts that are listed on the agenda. Any declarations anyone wishes to wear? I see nobody, so that's excellent news. Item 3 on the agenda is as a standard item. It says the minutes of the previous meeting for information. The eagle-eyed amongst you will notice they aren't here today because this is a special meeting. Our normal business will be resumed next Monday, where we have another Governance Audit Committee. The fun just doesn't stop, does it? And we'll have the minutes at that meeting. So we will therefore move on to the meat of today's meeting, which is agendas items 4 and 5, which kind of run together, but we'll take them in order to start with. So the first item is the statement of accounts and the annual governance statement for 22-23. Before I ask Liam to talk about it, perhaps Councillor Barry has got a few words just to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to say much, just to because of the volume of the reports. But remember this time last year, when I paid tribute to staff and members for the performance throughout the financial year 21-22, saying it was probably the finest performance to date by this authority, and was only right to acknowledge the efforts of staff and members and the Welsh Government playing their part in that performance, which was through a very difficult period. But not realising that 22-23 was going to be a financial year like no other. Easy to forget, but October 2022, Chair, inflation 11.1%, 41-year high. Began May 22 with interest rates at 1% and saw 7 rises in that year to take interest rates to 4.25% by the end of our financial year, March 23, highest for 14 years. February 22, it's not forgetting Russia invaded Ukraine, sending food, fuel and energy markets into turmoil. We were 2 years out of a pandemic. We'd had 3 prime ministers, 4 chancellors, and in September, to add to the misery, Kwasi Kwarteng threw the economy off a cliff. So quite a tumultuous year, really, Chair. And I thought just to give that perspective as we go through these reports in terms of the gravitas of that financial year, and the performance is highlighted even more by that.
Thank you. That's a really helpful sort of scene setting, really, to understand the context of these accounts. Liam, I guess I turn to you to talk us briefly through these. I mean, obviously, there's 170 pages of the accounts themselves. Any particular highlights you want to flag up to us?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I won't go through them page by page for obvious reasons. So the statement of accounts is one of the cornerstones of financial governance, and I think this report demonstrates what a well-run and well-led organisation we are, and that we're in a relatively stable position to tackle the financial challenges that all local authorities are facing at the moment. In terms of some of the figures, so usable reserves have remained fairly consistent and at what I deem to be appropriate levels. Whilst net assets have increased significantly over the course of the reporting period, this is mainly due to an increase in property, plant and equipment, and many of those are to provide services which are statutory and they're not readily convertible to cash. The second part of the report is the annual governance statement, and this details how the organisation ensures it continues to be run effectively and outlines the steps that it takes to provide assurance in this area. Part of that process is an assessment from the Head of Internal Audit, and the report identifies that the opinion of the Head of Internal Audit is reasonable assurance over the adequacy and effectiveness of the governance arrangements at the authority. Detail of the governance challenges that the authority faces is set out in Part 7 of the annual governance statement, which is page 148 within the main document. Part 8 details the progress on items that we've identified in last year's report. As the Chair mentioned at the start, it's quite an unusual year this year in terms of we've had a change of Section 151 officer during the audit process. So to provide some additional assurance, I've reviewed the accounts. I've worked with Adele and the team as well in terms of looking through the working papers and providing assurance in that way. Obviously, there's the report from Audit Wales colleagues, which we'll come on to shortly. But our previous 151 officer, Steve Jones, also sent me an email on his last day to state that if he was still in post, he would be happy to sign off the accounts in the form that they were in. So that's that additional level of assurance that I wanted to provide you with as well. And I also want to take that opportunity to thank Steve, my predecessor, and Adele and the team for all of the hard work that's gone into producing these accounts. We'll come on to some of the amendments through the audit process in a second, but you'll see that there's very little in there and there's no change to the bottom line at all. That's a fantastic achievement in such trying circumstances as well. So that was it, but happy to take any questions and comments.
Thank you, Liam. As always with these things, it's the people who are in this room aren't necessarily people who've done a lot of the work. So the standing on the shoulders of giants thing really does apply, doesn't it? It's a team effort, and not just the finance team, but the entire organisation to ensure that it's a well-run organisation and a well-managed organisation. You're able to get the information together in a timely fashion to deliver to a deadline. Deadline being this week, where the accounts get signed off. So. I'll hold off on saying well done until we actually get to read the auditor's report. But yeah, questions for Liam and perhaps even Councillor Barry. Any issues? Oh yes, Councillor Tubby, yes.
Yeah, the one figure that stood out to me was on page 20, school transport. There was a budget deficit of 885,000. I just wonder, like, I don't know what the school budget is normally, but it seems a huge deficit, particularly as petrol prices rose about 2 or 3 years ago now. It wasn't a sudden, it's not something that came in that year, but perhaps it's difficult for you to answer really, because, you know, we've got no one here from education really, but...
So I'll give you some context in terms of it's not just the price of fuel, but the heads of the valley work that's going on, which means that there's significant additional pressures on the school transport budget. I know that's something that we're seeing in this reporting period as well. This is looking back at the previous year, but that's something that's come through and been exacerbated in this reporting period as well. So the heads of the valley works are having a major impact on our school transport budget, unfortunately. But we are lobbying and in discussion with Welsh Government, because ultimately it's their scheme that is causing us to face those financial pressures. So we are flagging that with Welsh Government as well.
Oh, thanks. I had assumed they were paying for the additional cost anyway, but that wasn't the case, no.
Not at the moment.
No. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tubby. Councillor Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've answered some of the question that you are in talks with Welsh Government, because it is their project. Do you know how much out of that 850,000 is in relation to the dualling works in the A465?
I don't have those figures to hand, unfortunately, Councillor Salmon, but we can take that away and come back to you.
Okay. Would you be able to have that tonight at full council?
I certainly try my best to.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Salmon. One from me. There's a couple of places it mentions joint operations. It's page 5 of the cover paper. So paragraph 5 of the cover paper, and in the report itself, it talks about city deal. The new language now is corporate joint committee, and I presume that is included in this. I just wanted, just for absolute clarity, that has been properly aggregated into these accounts.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can confirm that's been consolidated in.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Other questions about that for another day, I think, but that's really helpful. Okay, I'll bring Councillor Salmon in.
You probably have the same, but it's quite difficult to ask questions here today because no one is here from the different directorates. But I just wondered if anyone could answer, maybe the cabinet member. Social services is overspent by 1.2 million. Obviously, there's reasoning in there for that. Are we looking at, or can we look at ways that will save some money going forward, because it is looking quite difficult?
Yeah, I mean, what we've got to remember, this is 22, 23 accounts finishing in March this year. We've put a lot of money into looked after children and our own facilities, and as time goes on, that will pay dividends. It's certainly had the effect of stabilising the budget so far. It is a difficult and a volatile budget because we never know how many looked after children we're going to have, for example. But we've got new homes coming online. There's a large facility that is due to be completed in the plans are in for the near future. Again, adding to our ability to take our own home-based children, but also to charge from outside of the area as well, which becomes an income stream for us as well then. So it is. We have to remember, it's a retrospective report, and there are issues that we put, mitigating factors in to sort of stabilise that whole area.
Lovely, thank you. Bearing in mind we're 6 months in now, more than 6 months into the new financial year, and I know it's retrospective. Have we saved money now after 6 months? Would any of the things
we are seeing benefits now? I don't know if you've got specific figures, Liam.
I don't have the specific figures to hand right now, but social services is an area that we have underspent against budget in this year. So there are the mitigations that we're putting in place. We are starting to bear fruit.
Great, lovely, thank you both.
Okay, thank you for those questions. We'll kind of move on to agenda item 5 and consider them as a collective, because we were asked obviously to approve these ahead of full council tonight. So it's probably best to move on to agenda item 5, which is, in technical terms, called the ISA 260, but it's the audit of accounts report from Audit Wales. And I'll turn to my left to Alice King. Hello, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, I'm here to present to you our audit of accounts report, or our ISA 260. I'll presume that everyone's had a chance to read the report as it stands. I'll go through most of the pages, but not everything, but please feel free to ask questions about anything contained in our report today. So starting off at paragraph 1, our introduction, just like to remind everyone that we don't audit every pound that sits within your accounts. We audit using the materiality level that we set on every audited body. For yourselves, this level is set at 2.579 million for this year. And we also have a reporting level of 129k, which means any errors below this level we don't report here, although we do discuss these with management. As always, there are a few areas in the accounts which we set a lower level of materiality, and we call them material by nature. This includes the senior officer remuneration, so salaries, pension, NI, and exit packages of senior officers, and also any related parties which are between senior officers and members and businesses. So I'm going to move on now to the status of the audit. You'll know that this year has been incredibly tight on timetable, given the pressures both here and across the public sector in resourcing. So there were a couple of areas at the date that we provided you this report which were outstanding. So to give a verbal update on these, the finalisation of the areas outlined in our report, being leases, consolidation of the city deal and the cash flow, are all now complete, as is the review and the finalisation of review points of the audit file. We have completed our checks of the amended accounts. We did identify some discrepancies in the version that you have here today. I believe, Adele, you might be giving an update on that, maybe at the end of this, you could give an update. So we did find some amendments that needed to be made post you having your version of the account, but these have been corrected by Adele and their team, and we have checked those again. So in short, we've now completed the audit work substantially, and we are happy with the report and the opinion that we've given in this paper. So moving on then, the good news for you all is that we are giving an unqualified audit opinion this year to say that your accounts are true and fair, which is great work and testimony to the work of the council and the finance team here. There are some, as always, some amendment and issues that we've had during the audit process. I've outlined these in Appendix 3 of the report. I won't take you through any specifically there. I think they're there for you to read, but please ask any questions. There's nothing significant that we'd like to draw to your attention, and there weren't any significant issues arising from these errors. So finally, we will be making some recommendations for management to improve, as always, the process, but we will be providing these at a later date given the tight timetable this year. We'll make sure that those are presented to those charged with governance at some point in the future. So all in all, I'd like to really thank Adele and her team, and obviously it was a bit of a difficult audit process this year with the timetable. Also thanks to Liam, who's kind of, I think he came in possibly the worst week of the audit in terms of clearance of issues. So big thanks to Liam as well for being so helpful with that. And yeah, I'm more than happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you, Alice. That's really helpful and positive. Can I just check what you just said? The last one thing you said, we talked about Power 16. You said that you will be bringing some recommendations to us because Power 16 says there aren't going to be any.
Sorry, so to clarify that paragraph,
okay.
There's no recommendations that at this stage we want to bring to you in this report, but we will be providing an appendix. It's a management letter that normally gets presented to the audit committee. So apologies, that could have been clearer in our report. Okay,
that's helpful. And the other thing, just to check the language.
Yep.
You said we've completed our work substantially is the phrase you use. I wrote it down. Do you mean you've completed? Full stop. I mean, nothing's going to change between now and this evening when the accounts get signed off.
So we always say substantially because we will need to check the signed version that you provide us to our audited one. We also need to check the letter of representation as well. So we always say substantially up until the point that the Auditor General signs his accounts.
Okay, that's fine. And the last one from me, well, I think it's the last one. The list of things that are in Appendix 3, the errors and misstatements that have been corrected.
Yeah.
Did any of those have any substantial impact on the bottom line?
No. No, as Liam said, there's nothing that impacted the bottom line. There was a couple of errors where it was both under and overstated in different parts, and those netted off. But yeah, there was nothing that affected the bottom line substantially.
That's substantially good.
It's a favourite word of ours.
I would very much like it if the report was written that says, for example, Power 14 says there were initially misstatements in the accounts that have now been corrected. However, we believe they should be drawn to your attention. It would be very nice if there was a sentence in there that says what you've just said, which is none of these affected the bottom line, or whatever phrase you want to use. Because again, the reader's going to have to be an expert accountant potentially to understand what all of the things listed in Appendix 3 are, whether they did in fact mean the accounts were misstated or not. It's really helpful to understand that they would.
Yeah, we can definitely take that forward. I'll make a note of it for next year. Obviously, we have to report in a certain fashion to meet the ISA standards. But I accept your point, and we'll consider it for next year.
Terrific, excellent. Thank you, Alice. You teed up Adele pretty well there in terms of talking about things that have in this ever-moving feast until we finally nail it down with a sign-in tonight. That there have been some minor tweaks. So if you want to give us a flavour of those tweaks, please, Adele.
I'll pick those up, Chair. And if there are any queries, I may have to bring Adele in. But so the first of these changes related to the tables and pie charts on pages 5, 6, and 7. They have been amended to reflect an adjustment to Note 8 in terms of the percentage figures. The pie charts were correct, but the percentage figures that outlined the side of that pie chart needed amending. And as I said, these didn't have any impact on the bottom line, and the title in one of the columns in note 24 has also been updated. I think it said 2022 has been updated to the correct year. So they were trivial in nature, had no impact on the bottom line, but are not included in the paper that you received last week.
Excellent, thank you, Liam. You managed to do that without a safety net of Adele, so thank you for that. We are therefore formally asked to approve these or recommend for adoption at full council this evening. Are we happy to do so? I don't see any dissenting voices. That's excellent news. Just while we're on the subject of a council, it's probably worth having a conversation about next year. This is the joy of this, that the next one rolls around. We're 8 months through this year, and therefore the next year end rolls around. Alice, I wonder whether there's anything you want to say about timelines for next year and how that's going to be managed, and also about sort of, obviously we'll get into the accounts planning, but is the intention now there's going to be more of a stable team delivering the service going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As an organisation, we are looking to bring the timetable forward next year. I can't make any promises at this stage of what that will look like. I know our Executive Director of Audited Services wrote out to you to explain our intention to bring that forward over a 3-year period to get us back to signing all accounts by the end of September. That is over a 3-year period, and we're still working through this year's the 22-23 financial statements audits. So we're not in a position to say what that will look like for next year. Of course, I'd hope the audit team would be more stable next year, and it's something we'll look to work on over the next few years before we come back to do our planning work for 23-24. I should also probably say that this year you are in the very first tranches of councils that were signed off, and that you will meet your statutory deadline, and that's no mean feat. And I think Adele and my audit team worked really hard to make that happen. As I said, hence those couple of caveats that we had to put in the ISO 260 at the time that we gave it to you. But hopefully next year, the timetable will move forward.
So it's not a competition, but we're winning. That's excellent news.
You weren't quite first. You weren't far off.
That's excellent. And if we were in tranche 1, then I presume in terms of deadlines and that, as you said, Anne-Marie's letter, the intention was to meet the 31st October deadline next year. Ambition, that's our ambition. Should we say that if it's not actually a physical deadline? Who knows with deadlines? Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. And I presume we'll be seeing you next year if nothing else changes as well. Excellent.
Get rid of me.
That's really helpful. Thank you, everyone. Andrew Warden, yes.
One of the recommendations is also to approve the annual governance statement for consideration with the accounts. And I'd formally like to thank Helen for collating that information. It's quite a difficult document to bring together. It's very comprehensive, but it does depend on other services across the organisation contributing into that. And Helen does a very good job of putting it together. I'd just like to formally put my thanks on the record, Chair.
Thank you. And it's remiss of me not to mention that earlier. I think probably because we've seen this at an earlier meeting. So we've had the opportunity to study this, and we've had a good go through it going forward. But to echo that, Helen, thank you. It's well appreciated. It tells the story. I think that you recognise the organisation from reading it, which is not always the case with some organisations. So thank you, Andrew, for reminding me. That's our substantial business today, really. Item 6 is reflection and evaluation. This is formulaic rather. We have to fit it in for the deadline. Normal business is we have another meeting next Monday, and we'll have a far more substantial meeting, I am sure. There is no any other business. So thank you all for your attendance, and good luck this evening signing off the accounts. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.